Hello, and thank you for joining me with a presentation about raising a baby millionaire. My name is Tashina Anderson, and I'm going to be taking you through some detailed information to make sure that you're prepared for the years to come with your little one, to make sure that you're investing, saving, and teaching them about money. So, what is, hold on one second. Okay. All right. So, what is Baby Millionaire? And this is basically resources. We're going to be providing educational tools, some free advice, so that we can make sure that parents are raising wealthy children. Now, there are three programs that we focus on, and those programs are one is called an ESA account, another one a 529 plan, and the third one is called it's called a custodial account. So let's talk a little bit about our mission. Our mission and what we focus on with Baby Millionaire is to help parents to teach their kids, for one, to stay away from debt. One of the things we see is that debt is a big reason why a lot of us as adults have a hard time building wealth. The other thing we want to help parents to do is to help them to teach their kids how money works. A lot of times, I know as I was raised and prior to the other generations, money is just one of those things you don't talk about. You don't talk about money. You don't know how much your parents make. You don't know what they do with their money. And what this causes is, as you grow up, sometimes kids, they don't know what to do because they've never talked about it. It's one of those things that you don't mention it in your house. So we want to encourage parents to talk about money and how it works. We also want to help parents to understand how investing early works in your favor. And this is a big one. And this is one of the things that you're going to get a lot out of, is just understanding the timing of investing. The last thing is helping parents to understand which accounts to use. So that's also something really big that we focus on in Baby Millionaire. Now, let me give you just a little bit of background about my story, who I am. I've been an entrepreneur now for the last 11 years, and I did really well for myself. My first 10 years in business, I had made over $7 million. I thought things were, going great. Really enjoyed being in business for myself. And we had a huge change within our company, so much so that at the time, I got really scared and thought that there was a possibility of losing the business. Now, what this did, and probably one of the best things, I was blessed that the business stayed intact. We continued to do well. However, but what this moment did for me is that it caused me to rethink some things. It caused me to rethink how I was doing things with my own children. I started to think of, what if the business did go away? What would have happened? I made all this money, but I really didn't put anything away for my kids' college. I didn't put anything away for, maybe their first car, some other things that I knew were going to come up, but I started to get a little afraid. And so this caused me to do a lot of research. And I spoke to a lot of different people in the financial field. I spoke to a lot of my friends, a lot of other successful people, and wanted to find out what kind of programs they use for their kids. And really, I was just looking for a savings plan for my children. Nothing major, just how can I save better for them? Now, what I found out in the process of doing the research is I started to find out how these programs work. And it wasn't just about saving, but it was really about you putting in a certain amount and seeing an account grow to 10, sometimes 10 times more than what you put in. So I want you to imagine this, you find out that, your business is changing and you wish that you would have started something a long time ago where you could have contributed less and received way more than what you put in. And so what this caused me to do is to start to say, well, wow, if only other parents knew about this, if they only understood how investing worked for their kid, I bet you they would do it. They would understand it, and they would say, you know what, it makes more sense to start as early as I can. And so I wanted to create a program that really educated parents to do that, because here are the three things that I noticed that I was afraid of myself. So even having the money, and some of us do really good for ourselves. We might not feel like it's great, but if you have enough, I always say, if you have enough money left over to eat out, if you have enough money left over to go on vacation and do those kinds of things, then you have enough money to invest for your kids. So, here are the three things that I found why I wasn't doing as much as I could, or why I wasn't even doing anything at all. And the first fear that I had was what was going to happen to the money. I really didn't know if I put the money in, if I had to go through someone, how much would they make off of my money? I didn't know if I could lose some of the money. I didn't know how the investing part of it worked. So that was the first fear I had. And really, again, this is just obviously not knowing. So it was a fear of what could happen to the money. The other fear was, what if I need it? Is that what's going through your mind? Like, what if I put this money in the account? What if I need it? What are the penalties? Can I get it back? Can I get the same amount back? How does that work? And then the third thing that was going through my mind is, I really just don't know what's the best place to put it. I've heard of certain programs. I mean, you've seen the Gerber baby promotions, and I just didn't know what program was a good program for me to invest for my children's future. So when I found all this information out, what it made me want to do is, first thing I realized is there aren't a million options out there. There are really some good options, some really, really good options that the 9 out of 10 parents use that do investing for their kids. And I wanted to make sure that I covered those programs in this training session. So the first thing I want you to do, and this is part one. So there's a 2 parts to this webinar. There's 2 parts to it. This is part 1, and I want to get into some things that as a parent you should be looking into. No matter how many kids you have, I want you to start thinking about how you're going to help your children financially. And the reason I say this, because I know that there are 2 types of parents. And this is the first parent is the parent I used to be. I was that type of parent where I felt like, I had to sacrifice and pay for my own education, college education, my first car. I had to sacrifice and pay for, the down payment on my first home. And so I always felt like if my kids learned how to do some of those things on their own, then they would work harder. It would make them a good woman, a good man. And I was actually helping them by not helping them. So the first type of parent is the parent that says, you know what, I believe my kids, I'm not giving them anything. I believe they should work for everything that they want to have in life. And I understand that philosophy. I thought like that at one time too. And then there's a second type of parent. The second parent that says, you know what, I would really like to help my kids any way I possibly can. If I can help them, I would like to help them. And you're the parent that we cater a little bit more to, because we want you to get the best bang for your buck. We want you to say, okay, if you want to help them with college, or you want to help them for their first car, let us show you the best ways to do that. So first, you're going to think about, okay, what do you want to contribute to? Now, here are the 4 major life events that, a young adult will run into that will need the most money. First is their first car. And a first car is, something that sometimes helps the parent. You feel like, okay, if my kid has a car, now I don't have to take them to practice. Now I don't have to take them to work. They can kind of get around on their own. Maybe they can help me out by going to the store. So a lot of times as parents, we want a kid to have their first car. And there's certain things, things that you could do to make sure that the kid obviously contributes maybe to their first car, but that is a huge major life event for a kid. So their first car. Then the second thing is college. Third is marriage. And then the 4th is their first home. So let's talk about what happens if you don't plan ahead. A lot of parents feel like, well, I'm kind of just getting by myself. So all the money I have either goes to bills, it goes to food, It goes to things like that. And if we have anything left over extra, yes, we do eat out sometimes, but not a lot. Or yes, we go on vacations, but maybe only one a year, one every other year. And so sometimes in a parent's mind, you could feel as though you don't have anything to contribute, to save, to put away. So let's talk about what happens if you don't put anything aside. You make that decision that it's just not in the budget. So let's talk about that. What happens if you don't plan ahead? And if you have older kids, you might be seeing some of this. You or your child will start to build up debt. Somebody's going to take out debt. Either it's going to be you or it's going to be them, but somebody is building up more debt on top of possibly debt that you already have. Or for the child, it'll be their first debt that they're accumulating. So debt is one of those things that is the biggest thief of wealth. So a lot of times we feel like, okay, well, the reason we're not wealthy is because we don't make a lot of money. Well, that's actually very far from the truth. You'll see in our country, we have a lot of Americans that could make the average income in a year, which is $52,000. And they've somehow, making $52,000 a year, have managed to acquire over $1 million of wealth. And a lot of them, if you talk to them, if you listen to their stories, is because they decided not to take on debt. So their income, they're able to invest it and it builds up over time. So the debt is the biggest thief of wealth. Now, let's just take a look at what the average debt is in our country when it comes to these four major life events. For their first car, in our country, the average price of a car is $33,560, which gives you a payment of about $503 a month. So remember, this $503 that you're paying because you have such an expensive car, you could be taking that same $503 and investing it. But because you have a car payment, then guess what? The money doesn't go to investing. It goes to a depreciating asset like a car. College tuition. Now, this is the big one. This is one most parents feel obligated to help their kids with. The average per year is about $33,000, $480 for a private institution, $9,650 if you're a state resident and you go to a public college, and about $24,930 if you're an out-of-state resident attending a public university. Now, guess what? These numbers aren't changing. They're not going to stay the same. And guess what? They're not going backwards. Last year, between 2016 and 17, tuition increased by 13%. Now, this changes every year, but it just goes to show you that, college increases. And if your kid is maybe 10 years away, that number is going to go up. It's not going to go down. Let's take a look at what the average wedding costs. So the average wedding is about $35,329. First home, median cost of a home in this country is $188,000. 20% down, your kid is going to need about $37,000 if you want to help them with their first home. So because we're taking a look at, obviously, this is large amounts of money that your kid will need. And if there's something in you that says, I would love to help them with this so they don't have to go into a lot of debt. The first thing I want you to think about is to start setting a goal. And that goal should start to look like, okay, here are the four areas and what is it that I want to contribute to those four areas? Now, maybe, for their first car, maybe you're not going to spend $10,000. Maybe you're only going to spend $2,000 or $3,000. These are just to give you some ballpark figures when you take a look at what the average cost is, and for a parent just contributing a portion of what that item might cost, or what that car or college tuition might cost. So I have $10,000 for their first car. College tuition, let's just say, for instance, if you want to contribute, they go to an in-state public school. And you want to help them with $10,000, that would mean a total of $40,000. Marriage, maybe you want to contribute to their maybe to their vacation, or maybe you want to also contribute to your daughter's dress, or maybe some of the food at the reception. So I have 10,000 for their wedding. Um, First home, I have $40,000. Maybe you want to help with the down payment. So all this together is about $100,000 that if you did contribute to those four areas, and here are just some average amounts, this is just showing you how to set a goal. It could be less, it could be more, but you want to have a number that is a total amount at the bottom, because this is going to help you to know what you would need to invest and where you would need to invest. So I have something that I think can help you out. And whether you understand this or not, I'm going to break this down, because this is probably going to be the most interesting part of this presentation, is you truly understanding compound interest. Now, I think Albert Einstein says it best when he says the most powerful force in the universe is compound interest. Now, I'd like to think of compound interest, so I can explain it in a simple way, is, hanging in there for the long term. Compound interest is different from simple interest. So simple interest is when you just earn interest on your money. Now, remember, compound interest is different. So compound interest is when the interest paid on principal, it's the interest paid on principal and previously earned interest. So it's compounding. So when you earn interest on your money, you're also earning, the next month, it's going to compound again. So you're going to earn interest on your money and the interest you earned previously from the month before. Now, most of us are used to, when we think about interest, we're not used to earning interest. We're used to actually paying interest. So if you have a car payment and you have, you take out a car at a certain amount, let's say you take out a car for $20,000 and you have a 10% interest rate, then you're used to paying 10% on your money. The way compound interest works is the complete opposite. So you're actually earning interest on your money. So the best part about it, and where the mystical part, where they call it the eighth wonder of the world, is that if you start very early, it works in your favor. So the earlier you start, the more you'll earn. And I know it sounds simple just saying it, but I want you to actually see the numbers. So I'm going to show you 3 different charts, and I want you to start looking at these numbers, and I'm going to show you how this works. Now, in an investment account, which is the accounts that we're going to go over, these are all investment accounts. And you can earn different amounts depending on what you have your money invested in. But on the very most, not complex, the most simple thing that you can invest in, which is something called the S&P 500. It's America's top 500 companies. It's a mutual fund. And over time, that one account will earn you at least 10%. So that's why I'm putting this up here, because this is what the average market index mutual fund that's an S&P 500, this is what it does, 10% over time. So let's take a look at this chart. So this shows you, okay, no matter what age your child is, if they're 5 or 10, the first 5 years of investing, this first chart says if you put $100 a month in an investment account that we're going to mention, and it's compounding at 10% over the next 5 years, that will mean that you will put in $6,000. So you could do the simple math. If you have a calculator, you have your phone, you want to pull it out and do the math on some of these accounts. And this is so you can see the difference between what you put in and how compound interest works in your favor over what period of time. So $100 a month will mean over 5 years will mean that you contribute $6,000, but it means your account will actually have $7,743. That is, you made over about $1,700 in that account. Not bad, right? But let's take a look at what happens if you continue to put the same amount in, $100, and I'm going to skip over to 18 years. So you put in $100 for 18 years, say from the time the child is born until they're 18 years old. That means you would have $60,000 in your account, but you've only contributed $21,600. Now, I always like to show parents that, because take a look. Before 5 years, you only made $1,700. Well, you have tripled your money in an 18-year period of time. Tripled. So $100 a month. To me, this is as simple as saying we're not going to, eat out this month. We're going to save $100 because one time this month we're not going to go to a restaurant, and that will give me $100 every month to put in my kids' account. And you can see over 18 years what you would have. Let's look and see if you want to do it long term and you want to continue to invest for your kid. And 40 years goes by, you put $100 a month in, it's on auto, and it goes in every single month. When your kid turns 40, they'll have $632 in their account. But that means you would only have contributed $48,000 over the span of 40 years. Now, I always like to show people, obviously, there's different layers to this because can you put in more than 100? So this is when you think about, okay, I want to contribute a certain amount a month. So you could do $200 a month. Well, look what happens if you do $200 a month for 40 years. $200 a month for 40 years would mean that you put in $96,000 in that period of time, but your child would actually have $1.2 million. What would happen if you could do $400 a month? Maybe you skip eating out 4 times that month, and you take $400 and you put it in their account. By the time they're 18, they would have $240,000. Now, do you think that's enough to pay for, school, car? Do you think that's enough to pay for the wedding and their down payment for their home? Absolutely. So they'll have more than enough. And if they don't touch it and they said, I want to just, keep it for retirement purposes, guess what? They get to 40 years old and you're giving your kid out $400 a month for 40 years. They'll have $2.5 million. And you would have only contributed $192,000. Now, I know this might sound too good to be true, but again, this is why I tell you, when I found this information out, I said, you have got to be kidding me. Most parents would have no idea. A lot of times you feel like you don't have it, or a lot of times you don't know where to put it. But if you only understood compound interest. So let's take a look at this second chart. And ways of keeping track of compound interest. Maybe you're not going to do it $100 or $200 a month. Maybe you start and stop, and maybe you do it in other ways. But there's always apps that you can download that are compound interest apps that can share with you where your money can grow to at what percentage rate. So you can change the percentage, 10%. You could do 15%. You could do 7%. You could change percentages. You could say, well, my account already has $5,000 in it. So what would I need to contribute in order to get to $100,000? So that's what the app will do for you. But let's take a look at this chart because I wanted to give you some ways of taking a look at this without using the app so that you would want to look at the app. Okay, so this says what happens if you invest for the first 20 years and you stop. So understand that compound interest doesn't mean that you're earning money on your money only when you're contributing money. No. Compound interest means you're earning money on your money every month, whether you put in anything or not. So your account is always going to continue to grow, especially if it has a large amount in there. So I want to show you a chart, and this chart says what happens if you invest for the first 20 years and stop. So this is less than 100. The first row you see is less than $100 a month for their first 20 years. This is $83.33 a month. And this is what the thought of, I'm going to give my kid, I make X amount of money, and I'm going to give my kid out of the money I make $1,000 for that year. That would mean $83.33 a month. So if you did that for their first 20 years of life and then you stopped, when they hit 20 years old, you would have $63,000 in that account. Then that means you stop. Okay? When they turn 30, the account is going to continue to grow. So when they turn 30, you'll have $163,000 in the account. When they turn 40, you'll have $423,000. Let's skip down to 60. When they hit 60 years of age, they'll have $2.8 million. And this is all if you just start at 1 and you go all the way up to 20 years old and you stop. Let's look and see what if you have a little bit more. So you can see some of the charts right there. Take a look at the figures, everything from $2,000 a year to $3,000 a year. When you get to 20 at $2,000 a year, you'll have 126,000. 60 years old, you'll have $5.7 million. Maybe you have a little bit more and you want to contribute $3,000 to your kid's investment account. That's $250 a month. That would mean by the time they hit 20, they would have $189,000 in their account. And this is because you're growing compound interest. So this is not just your money, but your money is making money for the first 20 years of their life, and then you just stop. By the time they're 60, they would have $8.5 million. Does that blow your mind? Well, look at if you're blessed enough where you're doing well, and let's say you want to contribute $4,000 a year to your kid's account. Look how much that would mean a month, what you would have, and look at what you would have at 60 years old. $11.4 million. Incredible numbers. Now let's take a look at this last chart. This last chart just shows, okay, what if you didn't do any investing? You skipped it when they were 1, you skipped it when they were 8, you skipped it when they were 15, and you say, you know what? They're 20 years old and I'm doing well for myself. This year, I made maybe $80,000, and I want to take 20 of that $80,000 and I want to put it in an investing account for them. So you didn't earn any interest on their first 20 years of life. You put in $20,000. Now, can that number be more? Absolutely. Could it be less? Yes. What if you get an inheritance? What if someone passes away and you want to put some money in for your kid? I just want you to see how the money will grow. So this is just showing you, I put in a lump sum when they were 20 and I did nothing. I added nothing and I did nothing. By the time they turned 30, that account would turn to $54,000. By the time they turned 40, that account would turn into $146,000. 50, they would have $396,000. And by the time they were 60 years old, they would have $1 million in their account. Now, I don't know about you. I gave you 3 different charts, 3 different examples. You can do this. You can start. You can stop. I mean, do I suggest it? No. I suggest doing it every single month, letting it add up. When you get a bonus, putting money into it, putting in as much as you possibly can. Obviously, you have your needs, you have things going on, but look at what you miss out on when you do absolutely nothing. You miss out on compound interest. You miss out on something that actually helps you with what you have to pay for. So what I wanted you to see is why it's so important to start as early as possible, and why it's so important to put in whatever you really can contribute that's not going to take away from eating or paying the light bill or paying for a mortgage or rent, but what can you truly contribute that's going to help your child in the long run for all of these major events that's going to come up. So we focus on 3 accounts to make sure that these are the accounts that you know the most about. And part 1, which we're in right now, is going to go over only 1 account. If you want more information and you want more information on the other 2 accounts, then you would need to take a look at part 2. And I'm going to show you how to do that as well. So let's go into the first account. Now, this is called an ESA account. An ESA stands for Covered Out Educational Savings Account. Let's talk a little bit about this account. Who sponsors this program? This is a U.S. government-based program. And so there's a tax code that goes along with this program that the U.S. government has created. And so it has tax benefits to it. Let's take a look at the tax benefits. So it's considered a tax-deferred trust account, meaning your earnings are tax-free. Now, I want you to go back to the chart that we just talked about. The longer you keep it in the account, remember, your earnings are going to be more than what you actually contribute. So in some cases, you'll have 3 times the amount of money in earnings. Some cases, you'll have 10 and 20 times the amount of money in earnings. So that money being tax-free long-term is important because that's the majority of the account. Now, you cannot deduct these contributions on your taxes. And that's, something we could talk about later, but that is something to know that an ESA account is not, the money that you contribute cannot be deducted from your taxes. So what's the max amount that you can contribute annually? An ESA account will allow you to contribute $2,000 per child per year. Now, if you're married, you'll actually be able to put in $4,000, and you have to file your taxes, married filing, I believe, jointly in order to do this, but you are allowed to put in $2,000 per child. And if you're married, then you can put in $2,000 from one parent and another $2,000 from the other parent. So what can the money be used for? An accredited public or private institution for every level of education, colleges, universities, vocational schools, post-secondary educationals. You can even use this money for, you can even use this money for if they were in a private school for middle school, elementary, middle school, or even high school. Foreign institutions as well, you can go to www.fafsa.ed.gov, and it'll give you more information if they would like to go to a foreign institution. What counts as deductions? So some of the things you can count as deductions are tuition and fees, books, supplies and equipment, academic tutoring, special needs services for special needs students, room and board, uniforms, transportation, equipment like hardware, software, and internet access. So what does not count? What does not count? So that would be like any kind of insurance payments you have for your kids, sports expenses, or monthly health club dues that they might have while they're in college, electronics or smartphones, so nothing cellular, smartphones or anything like that, but you would be able to do transportation and traveling costs. You would not be able to also do transportation and traveling costs. Repayments of student loans. So you can pay for school, but you can't use the money for a repayment of student loans. Room and board, and access of what the housing costs would be. So let's just say, for instance, your kid wants to live off the college campus, and it costs a little bit more than room and board. You would only be able to deduct up to what the room and board costs for that school. So how much you need to get started? This will depend on which financial institution you use and what you want to invest in. You may need $1, or you might need more depending on the institution again and the investments that you choose. For instance, if you want to start your account and purchase possibly individual stock, you would need the cost of that individual stock. It could be as low as, a penny stock, all the way up to something, like Apple might be a few $100s to get into that account. So just depending on what you're investing in. We're going to talk more about what to invest in and how to do that in part 2. Okay, sorry. So how does it work? Well, one of the things you do is you pick the company you want to use. You set up your account, and then you pick your investments. How do you get the money out? Now, this was one that I, was concerned about, because what if I need it? I've put it all in my kids' college fund. Of course, I want to help them, but what if I come upon like a hard time and I need this money? So you will request, when you need the money, let's just say, how do you get the money out? So you get the money out, and now I'm just talking about when they go off to school and you start to need the money to pay for their expenses. You'll request a certain amount, and the institution can either write you a check, transfer the money into your account, or send the money to the school. You will have to provide receipts if you're ever audited. So they're not going to ask you, they might ask you what the money is used for, but they're not going to ask you to send in any paperwork. You don't have to go through a lot of loops and, hoops and all those kind of things. You just tell them what you need it for, what you're going to be spending it for, and they'll actually just send you your money. If you need to get the money out prior to when they hit school, one of the things that you're going to have to do is you're taking it out early. So if you take it out early and you need to use it for something outside of educational purposes, they will charge you a 10% penalty along with your tax rate. So just remember that, that you're going to get a 10% penalty if you take the money out early. How old do you have to be? In order to start the account, your child would need to be 18 years old or younger. When a beneficiary reaches age 30 or for some crazy reason would pass on, you must roll assets remaining to another qualified beneficiary within 30 days. If something happens like death, they will give you the money and you don't have to worry about a penalty on your money. So let's talk a little bit about maybe some disadvantages to this program. An ESA account, there's a $2,000 limit. So if you are the type of parent that says, $2,000 is not enough, then you might want to try some of the other programs that we're going to talk about, because maybe this is just limited and you would like to be able to put in more. There's also no tax deductions on your contributions. So you're not saving any money on taxes when you're contributed to this account. Only future earnings that are tax-free. So remember that, there's no deductions for you, but there are, obviously tax-free benefits, and your interest or your compound interest is growing tax-free. So these are maybe some of the disadvantages to this program that people take a look at and say, okay, do I want to use this account? Now, I've seen it where some parents say, you know what, I love this account because some of the advantages of this account is I can invest in kind of whatever I want to. Because of the type of institution you pick, they'll allow you to pick individual stocks, they'll allow you to pick mutual funds, they'll allow you to pick whatever you want to invest in and use that with this account. And so there's the advantages, the wide range of things you can invest in. The disadvantage is that there's a limit on it and there's no deductions on your taxes. So hopefully you've enjoyed this part 1 of the Baby Millionaire Club program to teach your kids about wealth. Part 2, we focus in on the other 2 programs. So we focus in on the 529 plan. We focus in on the custodial accounts for your kids. And then we talk to you a little bit more about which investments to put into these accounts, which companies to use for your kids' investment accounts. So hopefully you found this to be good information. Please come back, check out TashinaAnderson.com, check out the website, check out more information. Baby Millionaire Club, we have an Instagram page where we like to put out free content, but check back with us. We're going to have some things that are coming up in the future that you're going to be able to have to flashcards for your kids. We're going to be creating a few different money flashcards, obviously, but things to really teach your kids strategies early on about not only investing money, but how to make money. What do you do with money? How do you earn money? How do you save it? How do you give some of it away? How do you invest it? And these are things that we believe that kids should learn at a very early age. So we appreciate you checking us out at the Baby Millionaire Club. .com is also our website, and we would love for you to tell another parent about us. Hopefully they will get great information from this as well. And if you are interested in taking a look at part 2, we'll have that available on the TashinaAnderson.com website. If you go to the Rich Academy will have part 1 and part 2 there, and you'll be able to take a look at part 2 of this webinar. So thank you so much. Again, my name is Tashina Anderson, and hopefully this was helpful in helping you to understand why investing early can really save you and really save your children in the long term, and will help you to help them to build wealth. Again, thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you in the future.